Okay, hi, I'm Kate, this is Graeme,
I'm Graeme.
and we are doing our review for The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. It's right here. I really liked this book. The writing, the prose was really good. The descriptions were very vivid. The characterization was very well-rounded.
I liked this book. It was very descriptive of characters, which I always like, and it really paints a very vivid picture of Afghanistan and with nowadays in the news and whatnot, you get a very negative image of Afghanistan, so it's good to know it's got a nice history.
And it's not all serious all the time, even though it is pretty serious a lot of the time. In terms of themes, there are a lot of themes you can pick for this novel.
We chose for the theme gender roles with a focus on masculinity because it seems pretty important with Amir's journeys through his life.
And our guiding question is, how does Amir's concept of his own masculinity influence his personal development over the course of the novel?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so should we just go through and
Yes, I think so.
masculinity? Okay.
We have some points here that we're going to sort of just discourse on.
Okay. So starting with the beginning of Amir's life, masculinity is, well, first of all, quite a large focus on men in Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty important theme because, again, the man box, the video we watched, it's very prominent in Afghanistan culture.
Yeah, and they have very determined ideas of what typical masculine behavior and typical feminine behavior is, and their culture has a big importance on reputation, things like that. So if it's very important in most Afghanis' lives to be perceived correctly, as correctly for your gender.
Yes, and starting very early in Amir's life, it becomes apparent that he's not the most burly, I'm gonna go beat up some children type of guy. He's the creative type.
Yeah. And his father, Baba, is sort of this typical ultimate man who wrestles bears and drinks wine and talks badly about the religious leaders and the Russians.
Yes.
And he obviously, from the very start of the novel, has a idea of what he wants his son to be like, and Amir does not fit what he believes his father wants for him, and that influences him psychologically enormously from the start.
And to further plague Amir, his house servant Hassan does fit these ideals of masculinity, and Baba notices that and kind of burns him a bit.
Yeah. Because Hassan is self-confident and physically active and not afraid to stand up for himself.
But he also stands up for Amir when Amir refuses to.
Yes. But also Hassan's not a bully. He's a kind-hearted, loyal person. So I think, and then Amir is not necessarily a bad person, but he is a much more vindictive and bitter person.
Yes, and throughout the story, he calls himself a coward openly.
Mm-hmm. And his own perception of himself is, a lot of it is defined by what he isn't rather than what he is, because he feels he isn't masculine, he isn't brave, he isn't what his father wants for him, and that definitely pervades his whole psychology through his adulthood and childhood.
Yeah, and so now some masculine behavior includes getting dominance over other people, which would bring us to the rape scene in the book.
Mm-hmm. Which is the most important scene in the book, because that's, Amir witnesses Hassan being raped by SF and some others.
And it really becomes the pivotal point in the story that shapes how Amir views himself in a negative light.
Yeah, and Amir's relationships with a lot of people, and because it's yeah, the rape of Hassan is, I wasn't supposed to put that in quotation marks, but the rape of Hassan was a act of hatred and racial-based hatred, but also just the extreme ends of masculinity, of dominance, complete dominance and power and physical power over another human being. And Asef is almost, in some ways he's the least masculine, and in other ways he's the most, he occupies both ends of the spectrum, because he exerts this extreme power physically over the people, which is typically masculine thing to do, but he also is cowardly and picks on people who are socially and physically smaller than he is, and he is not a brave person. Like how Baba stands up for the woman in the smuggling cart when
Baba willingly stands alone and is willing to die for this woman, while Asef won't do anything without his two strong buddies around, and does it all out of shame instead of pride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, that is another character who occupies like different places on the masculine spectrum is Rahim Khan, who is arguably the only character in the book who actually balances his femininity and masculinity in what we think of as a healthy way, because he is a masculine person. He is in that he has a important place in Afghan culture. He he's a rich man with power and influence, and he's not girly, but he is more sympathetic than Baba, and he shows interest in Amir's writing and things like that, which,
it almost as if looking at Amir as a young child, it seems like Rahim Khan would be the one to father him, but no, that's not the crazy hanky-panky that went on in that generation.
No. Yeah, Rahim Khan, in that way also he shows almost like bravery in that he reaches out to Amir where Baba does not, and does the manly thing to do in fathering him almost.
And teaching him that it's okay to be a creative storyteller, and it's a good thing, and he'll be recognized for it one day, just not currently.
Also, on the topic of gender roles, sort of going to the other side, femininity in Afghanistan, there is, very rigid ideas of what women are supposed to be like. And one of the most striking examples of this, there aren't that many female characters in the book, since it revolves around a male character's relationship with other men. But the only really female character who influences the plot in a big way is Sanubar, who is Hassan's mother and Ali's wife, who is said to be a seductive temptress who is, so well known that she's talked about to Hassan after she's left and after she's been gone for years. And she is sort of occupies the horror end of the Madonna horror dichotomy. She's, very seductive. And later on you find in the story that she's not only seductive, but she's adulterous as well, because she had an affair with Baba. But, on the other hand, she was his servant, so her consent in this matter is really, kind of minimal, because, she can't say no to her boss.
But also because of her affair with Baba and Hassan resulting from that affair, it further goes to show the emasculation
of Ali. Yeah.
Who is sterile and was unable to produce her son.
Mm-hmm. And then is forced to raise another man's son as his own, and is, not bullied, but he's, mocked by the village children and stuff like that. Not village children, the neighboring children, for his physical deformities and things. So, he loses his masculinity as a result of Baba's, playboy, ultra-masculine sexing. Yeah. And then on that topic, you can, one of the interesting sort of implications of that is in the novel that's kind of uncomfortable, is that Sanibhar redeems herself sort of as an old woman wearing a burqa, and the way that she reaches sort of redemption in the audience and in Amir's eyes is when she takes on the role of a supporting grandmother who, so there's sort of the implication that in order to become a good person, she's become modest and non-sexual, and that while she was still occupying this highly sexual role, then she was a bad person, and she had to reject that to become a good person.
Yes.
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 Basically, to answer our guiding question, Amir, as he grows as an adult, and gets married, and then finds out he can't have children, and he seems, in America, he seems to have gained a bit more of his father's respect, but then his father dies, he finds out the truth about his father's adultery, and he, as all this goes on, his own ideas of what it means to be a man, what it means to be brave, really change his decisions over the novel.
Yeah, I think he really develops his own sort of man box and his own concept of what masculinity is, and makes sure he's proud of himself in that matter when he takes on Sohrab and comes back to America to live his life proudly.
Yeah, and in his sort of redemptive acts of, you can be good again, when he goes to Afghanistan to rescue his nephew, he's sort of redeeming himself by doing something that he thinks is courageous, and doing something, that's reminiscent of Baba on the train. He's doing something where he could be killed, but he's doing it anyway, to save an innocent person. And that's how he finds redemption with himself, is by correcting the mistakes of his past generation and breaking out of his idea of cowardice, becoming a man. Yeah, so that's basically all we have for you in terms of the video. It's a really good book. You should read it if you haven't already, but you probably have. And the movie's good. It's not as good as the book.
Not really, quite at all.
No.
Very dull plot line.
Yep.
But, yeah.
Yeah, the prose is definitely the selling point of the book. The prose is very good. So that just kind of gets lost in a movie. But, so I hope we didn't forget anything.
No.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you.